name is Alice. I worked for the Umbrella Corporation, the largest and most powerful commercial entity in the world. I was head of security at a secret high-tech facility called The Hive, a giant underground laboratory developing experimental viral weaponry. But there was an incident. The virus escaped and everybody died. Trouble was, they didn't stay dead.
Welcome once again to Success to Series, the failure to franchise spin-off all about Hollywood's hits, winners, and triumphs. This is Trev.
And I'm Chris.
And that's it.
That's it.
You know what? We don't need to get fancy here.
No.
We don't have to, we don't have to be like all like, oh, look at us, look at our clever jokes. This is different. This is a different show, know.
Mm-hmm. Is this franchise we're going to talk about fancy?
Well, boy, what a complicated question. That is definitely a debate to be had, maybe during this episode.
Yeah.
But hey, so this is Success to Series, and it's October. The spookiest time of the year. My favorite time of the year. So we thought, what better reason to visit a series that is based on one of the most famous horror video game franchises of all time, and is arguably itself not horror at all. We'll talk about that as well, because I don't know that I would call these films horror films,
right.
But we'll get into that. But just before we even say what the series is, as if you don't know from just clicking on the episode, but just to kind of clarify again for anyone who maybe this is your first time listening to Success to Series, and you're like, wait a minute, I tune in to listen to these two guys talk about failures. I love listening to them talk about movies that just totally bombed and didn't get sequels. Why are they suddenly talking about a successful series? Well, that is the point of Success to Series. Yes, this is a podcast typically devoted to Hollywood's foibles and the movies that didn't launch franchises, but just for our own sanity and also just for a comparison point, just to contrast what does work if we're going to spend so much time looking at what doesn't. We like to occasionally do these Success to Series episodes where we look at an overall franchise that not only succeeded, but that you and I are also a fan of, so that we can kind of digest this a little bit, talk about what worked, and maybe allow that to be lessons for the other filmmakers, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, the key is us to agree and be fans of. I think, because some of my friends have asked me over the years, like, hey, when are you going to do Bad Boys? And I'm like, I don't even think Trev's seen number 3, and there's been 4 of them.
And similarly for me, that would be like I love Hunger Games, and you have no interest.
Exactly.
But thankfully, we do have enough intersections, including, maybe this is surprising to some people, but including the one we are looking at today, and that is the Resident Evil franchise, and specifically the Paul W.S. Anderson. Right now as we record this, the film bros out there, the cinematic world is celebrating the return of Paul Thomas Anderson to movie screens. So we thought, let's just chug it along with cinema's second most important Paul Anderson, or maybe, I don't know, if you're crazy, maybe even arguably the most important Paul Anderson, Paul W.S. Anderson. And we'll look at his 6 Resident Evil films.
Yep.
So I'm very excited. And before we even say anything else, I just want to make clear right off the bat, that's just as a thesis statement, this for me, I don't know about you, Chris, I think this is true, but this for me is not an ironic love. I'm not approaching this tongue-in-cheek. This is not like, we're going to talk about how we actually like the Resident Evil films. No, I actually do like the Resident Evil films with no humor, no irony. This is a legit love, and I will certainly talk about that, while at the same time knowing exactly what they are, which is also part of why I like it.
Yeah, ditto. I'm not here to half shit on this franchise.
No.
I enjoy them. We'll get to them individually as a piece, as a whole cinematic achievement, really. And kind of talk about why this thing works. Like, technically it works.
And that's not just us saying it works. We should mention this is a $1 billion franchise.
Dude, this is crazy, because this is a consistent moneymaker across 6 entries from 2002 to when did the last one come out? 2017. So they cranked them out really fast too. And yeah, there's the budget of these movies. I always love to say up top is $313 million. That was all the 6 entries. And then they made $1.28 billion worldwide. And that's a bet I would take every day of the week. I also wanted to point out that we're going to get a little even more meta here, hat on a hat type stuff. But we are doing Success to Series about the Resident Evil franchise. but it's also part of another series within our Failure to Franchise main feed. We always love to do our theme months, and in the month of October, you know how you go to Halloween, you do trick or treating. We're doing Trick Our Resident Treveling, I guess. Trick Our
Yes. Trick Our Resident Trevel. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a squirrely one, but we like it, and so we're gonna talk. The beauty about this is we're gonna be talking about how much this franchise means to us and the world, and kind of why it's so big. But then also next episode, I just want to get it out of the way here. We will be talking about the reboot, the one from, what is it, 2021, I believe. Welcome to Raccoon City. So we're going to talk about that next episode. So right up top, we're not going to talk about that one at all here. And we are not going to talk about the video games much. I want to kind of make that clear here, because we discussed this before, and we really don't like repeating ourselves. So I think next episode, we're going to give you more of a breakdown of the IP proper, because of the subject matter of that new film. And that's because this franchise doesn't give a flying fuck.
I was going to say, yeah, why would we talk about the video games much? I don't think they did in the writer's room for these movies.
No, they do not care about those games. You know, we have some reasons why, which we'll get to, but I kind of wanted to say that off the bat. But yeah, Resident Evil.
Yeah, I was almost like going to build to that as a statement, but I'll just get it out of the way right now. Like when I talk about how much I like this franchise, what I do want to make clear to anyone who's listening and is like, "Are you kidding me? You know that's not a good a good adaptation of the games, right?" And I'm here to say, yes, I understand. These 6 movies are not a great Resident Evil franchise necessarily, but I do think they're a great Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil franchise. You know, his like reinterpretation and his bizarre. So you almost have to treat this as like an original franchise, and that's just like the slightest minor trappings of some IP that he was loosely basing it on. Yeah. But yeah, just to like briefly, really quickly, to go back to that box office thing, I just want to ask you, Chris, if you had the same experience where, as I was like revisiting these for this episode, it was very exciting to get to sit down and watch all 6 of them again. But I kind of had this thought in my head, like, 'cause I feel like most of the franchises we've done this for, or just like most successful franchises in general, do tend to peter out at some point. And in my head, I was like, I guarantee that probably happened with this franchise, right? Because I couldn't quite remember. I was like, it was probably really high at the beginning, and then by the end, I bet you that last entry, nobody cared anymore. Oh, nope, last entry is the highest grossing one. I forgot that this, like you just said, this was a consistent moneymaker, and in fact, its success continued to grow as the franchise went along. Oh yeah, which is and especially like with the leap in like success from part 3 to part 4, and how part 4 was a surprising like mega hit. And of course, there's some factors that we'll talk about with that, but just it's just that's the strange thing about the series. Is it's a series that in general I don't think is given a lot of respect, critically, and even just beyond that, except in certain nerd spheres like ours. But it's almost like dismissed how financially successful this was, and you just can't turn your eye from that, I don't think.
Yeah, and we had touched on that when we did our other Success to series. I believe it was the last one before this one, about the Underworld series. And they're almost, we always talk about those franchises as kind of like sister franchises in a lot of ways. They're all so critically panned, but they're making a bunch of money, and they have a female lead that is attached to the director that started the franchise, or is shepherding the franchise.
Also from the same company. And in fact, at one point behind the scenes, there was talks about doing a crossover. But,
yeah. I'm also glad that you mentioned right away between number 3 and number 4, Extinction and Afterlife, because Extinction, they actually planned on ending the franchise, but then it had the biggest opening weekend yet, so they were like, oh, never mind. Let's keep this train rolling. But yes, Trev, huge moneymakers, 6 movies over 15 years. Everybody hates them. Well, why do you think they, I guess, are consistent? But first, I guess let's get to the personal of it all. I want to know, why does this franchise speak to us, as well as why are we okay with it sort of bastardizing the IP in name only? Because I know when sometimes on our Failure to Franchise show, we always talk about, adaptations, and if it shits on the original idea, and if it doesn't, if it kind of betrays it, and in my opinion, I would say this sort of does betray it in a lot of ways, but
especially as you go further along.
Oh yes, but somehow Resident Evil toes the line
Yeah.
And me and you don't care about that at all. So I'll throw it to you. I'll throw it to you first.
Well, I think we're meeting the franchise where it's coming at us from, right? In that it clearly doesn't care at a certain point, you know? So there's something where if you accept that, I'll also say, and I know we're going to go through these kind of more individually in a moment,
Sure.
but I'll say I will be the guy who will make the argument that I think the first movie, while not the one-to-one correlation adaptation of the first game that I think the fans really wanted to see, I thought what Paul W.S. Anderson, what he was aiming for with that first movie, actually was kind of clever and did work in concert with the game.
Yeah,
this idea of like creating a prequel to the game, and I remember like advocating that after I saw it to people, saying like, no, actually, what he said was true. Like this could just run in up to the game, and it kind of works. It's like an additional story. And then with the second movie, all of a sudden that's like all out the window, and suddenly he's like saying, okay, now we're in the game universe, but what? Like it's not really matching up anymore.
Yeah.
So I think like maybe because like I respect what he's doing at the beginning, but also I do just think there is like a level of like, man, just like how brash it is and how like kind of, egotistically confident it is to just go off and make your own version of this and really just kind of keep including the characters and the iconography, but really doing your own thing with it. There's a couple things that I was going to actually save to the end of this episode, but I'm just going to say them now so that it saves us some time, and there's still plenty to talk about, of course.
Sure.
I'm going to borrow what a friend of mine said as I was having a discussion about this series. I was debating it with actually a previous guest of the podcast, my buddy Bird, the host of Kaiju Transmissions. He is not a fan of these films, nor is he a fan of Paul W.S. Anderson in general. And I was kind of on my horse of defending Paul W.S. Anderson and like what he kind of represents to cinema and defending these films. And Bird was talking about how he just thinks they're like total trash, like a lot of people do, right? And my other buddy Tom, though, who will be a future guest on this show, I'm sure, especially when we get to Dragon Ball Evolution, because he hosts a Dragon Ball podcast. But he is also a defender of these films, and he said something that I just want to quote because I think it so speaks to what I like about the series, and especially why I'm like so nostalgic for a series like this. He said, "The Resident Evil movies don't feel made by an algorithm or AI. It's one man's insane vision." And I was like, well, that's it right there.
Yeah, 100%,
right? Is that
100%.
when we think of like how algorithm driven and how lazy like most IP exploitation has become in recent years, this is someone taking an IP and doing something just kind of so unique and bizarre and so clearly him with it that's why I end up kind of respecting it, even though obviously there's a part of me that knows I should probably be mad that it's not adapting the games. Mm-hmm. But that's where that's at least where like some of my forgiveness comes from.
I agree. There's a through line, right? Like,
yeah,
Paul W.S. Anderson writes and directs the first one, and then hands off the directing to Alexander Witt for Apocalypse, to Russell Mulcahy for Extinction. And the only reason he does that is because, well, he gets offers to do Alien vs. Predator and Death Race. The difference, though, is he gives the directorial reins to two other guys, right? However, he writes all of them. Yeah. So he still has his fingerprints on it. He still has an idea what he wants to do, what he wants to see. I don't know if I would say that these are shadow directed, like a lot of other stuff we like to talk about, like the poltergeists of the world, But the influence of Anderson is palpable, regardless of the directors that are coming on board. He does eventually return for number 4 and 5 and 6. By the way, can I just say this? I have like a log line for all 6 of these movies. Can I just tell you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Resident Evil, the first one. Okay, Resident Evil Apocalypse, the one with Nemesis. Okay, Resident Evil Extinction, the one in the desert.
Yeah. Mad Max Resident Evil. That's what I call that one. Resident
Evil Afterlife, the one with the clones. Resident Evil Retribution, the one where everybody comes back. And then Resident Evil, the final chapter, the one where that stunt woman got hurt.
Oh, wow. I guess we had to get there. You had to bring it all down that fast.
I just want to get it out of the way. Okay. Yeah. I just want to get it out of the way with the 6th and final film of the Milla Jovovich and Paul Anderson saga. Unfortunately, her stunt woman was hurt real bad in a
Very
motorcycle.
tragic
Very,
accident,
very
yes.
bad. There was a stunt on a motorcycle without a helmet. Anyway, a malfunctioning crane hit her. She had to get her arm amputated. She had
Yes.
brain damage. She had a bunch of other stuff. Things with her spinal cord were all fucked up. Really, really bad. So much so. Her name, by the way, Olivia Jackson. That's her name, the stunt person. She ended up suing the producers and also suing Anderson because, okay, we love these movies and the creatives involved, but unfortunately, the companies involved didn't pay for her medical costs, and they tried their best to get out of it. And she took him to task, and she shouldn't have to, but she did. And I believe she did win her cases against them both. So, unfortunately, yeah, very, very, very serious accidents. We talked about stunt performers, and I can't even remember what episode we did before. But they're going to get an Oscar nomination category soon, and there's a reason why these people do the job instead of Milla Jovovich. Unfortunately, you know, when you run a set, maybe that's fast and loose like this, you know, stuff can go wrong. And she was significantly injured. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we say that Paul Anderson and everybody is just the amazing people that they are.
Well, you know, look, as someone who enjoys a number of John Landis films, you know, there's always a difference between your respect for like what they are bringing to film and, you know, what might be going on behind the scenes and the safety of the sets they're running and things. And yes, it was really unfortunate that, especially like in the last movie, that I remember that did like put a whole damper on what felt like it kind of should have been a celebratory moment since it came out, and like it was like this victory lap and it made the most money. But then that news story was kind of always hovering above it, unfortunately. So
I guess let's talk a little bit about Milla.
Well, that's the other factor, right? Because you asked, I mean, that's the second part of my answer to that, right? You asked like, why do I, you know, so I went into this like long thing about, oh, you know, the insane vision of this filmmaker and like what they're doing with the like IP, and then obviously the real answer is, well, it has Milla Jovovich in it, you know,
the horn dog answer. That's why.
But I think like you know, we can joke and like, you know, it's well documented on this podcast. We did a 2-month series about her in the past, Milla Jovovich, where it was documented then. We've done. I think we've even, you know, she's come up like other times since then.
Yep.
But
well, she's like geekdom royalty. Let's just
she's like the geekdom queen, right? And
yes.
it's well documented that she's my all-time #1 celebrity crush. But okay, so let's just push that aside. But I do always want to point to this franchise as like, I think it is like really, really telling. And I know we talked about this with Kate Beckinsale and Underworld as well. Although that is a series that, as it went along, the last one did not do as well. You know, and by the time you got to that, it felt like people were really kind of sick of Underworld. And you know who else was sick of Underworld? Kate Beckinsale. Yeah, like she was not happy about coming back and doing like the last two. You know, she just kind of did almost more like out of obligation. But she was like, the last one didn't make as much money, and she was quick to just get the hell out of there. And we've never had another one. Yeah. But Milla seemed to always enjoy doing these. She was there all the way to the end. I think they only had the 6th one be the end because it really felt to them like appropriate to bring it to a close. But I think if Paul W.S. Anderson tomorrow suddenly came up with a great new like Alice reboot idea, I know she'd be down. But I also just want to say, like, I think it's really important to give her flowers for saying, in an era where there's this discussion about how Hollywood doesn't treat actresses on the same level in the action genre, and how they have to kind of like fight and claw for the same respect, and how she's never really become a huge megastar, she did top line $1 billion franchise. Yeah. And by the time you get to the later entries, the marketing is heavily predicated on it being Alice is back, Milla's back. I mean, the trailer for part 5, the tagline is literally just Milla Jovovich in 3D. Like they knew what audiences were coming to see, you know. And so I think we will talk about her a lot during this episode, obviously, but I always just want to like celebrate her for that. The fact that she's a rare actress who has headlined a very, very successful franchise. And I think she deserves credit, and a credit that I don't think she often gets for that.
And again, Paul W.S. Anderson and Milla Jovovich met each other here and got married and have a wonderful life together to this day.
I played the video game a lot with my little brother, and I wanted to produce it. I wanted to make the movie. And then I found out that he wasn't my husband then, but this guy had the rights to it. We reached out and he asked me to read for it. You know, at that point I was like, hey, I'm the Fifth Element. Like, you really gonna ask me to read for this? And he was like, yes. I came in just very nonchalant and saw this really hot young director and I was like, ooh. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life.
Which is pretty cool, and especially since he did prop up the idea of a female protagonist. And it's pretty crazy that even today we still talk about this, which is quite wild, but especially back in 2000, when this movie was getting off the ground, he had to really fight for it. The executives were not so sure about starting their big action horror franchise with some girl. And Paul saw something in Milla Jovovich. I mean, I couldn't imagine what. But he propped her up, and the character of Alice is just a great, like, we'll get to it. She's just it's a wild character, especially when we talk about where she started in this franchise and where she becomes. And then, well, the circular, I guess, what am I trying to say? The arc, I guess I want to say, from beginning to end and circling all the way back. It's
which
pretty...
is probably using that term lightly, But...
Yes, very, very. But it's cool to see, and especially, calling her Alice and kind of basing the first movie on Alice in Wonderland. And even like the Red Queen and the White Queen later on and stuff like that. Like it comes from a really good celebratory place. And I'm just glad they never dropped her. You know what I mean? Like they never ever thought about it. To pass the franchise off.
Something sweet too about it. What you said, like they do meet and fall in love in the first one. They end up getting married, starting a family, and we'll talk about how that even develops into the sixth movie. But the fact that you mentioned how why he wanted to keep coming back and doing these, I think it's pretty cool and actually kind of like charmingly romantic. How it's pretty clear that the rest of the franchise is literally him just wanting to make movies about how badass his wife is.
Totally.
It's just like he's like, I know my wife is like the coolest woman in the world. I want to show the rest of the world that now. Like that's how I feel, right? So and that's how like the movies are designed around her at a certain point. I think that's cool. I would do that for my wife. I think people always give like Rob Zombie like guff for putting Sherry Moon Zombie and everything, but it's like when your wife is your collaborator and you love them, like I get it, like
she's just a terrible actress though. So I mean,
she's pretty great in Devil's Rejects, but again, that's like where Rob Zombie somehow accidentally made a masterpiece. So we don't need to relitigate all this.
No, we don't. I think we bring up Devil's Rejects maybe every 7 to 8 months in our lives. Yeah.
And okay. To just quickly, because you said the thing about Alice being a great character, I would just, and I know what you mean, I would butt up against that just a little bit. I don't think you're going to fight me too much. I don't think Alice is actually that great of a character. She's not a complex character.
No, but she's a great cipher.
She's a great cipher, yes. She's being constantly kind of invented and reconceptualized in every movie. But this does speak to what we like to talk about a lot. We were just talking about it with Samuel L. Jackson in the Shaft films in our previous series. There is something we just said for star power and screen charisma. And I think there is something about Milla Jovovich that even if it's just never broken through past the nerd realm, there's a reason people like seeing her on screen. And it's not just the beauty element. I think it's just that she has this you can tell she really enjoys the movies she's in. She doesn't think this is below her. This does not have the Kate Beckinsale effect. She seems so in on this and is clearly having a blast playing this character, and that comes across on screen well. It's infectious.
She's just so believable. I think that's what it is. Not only is she super hot, but she is believable as an action star. She commands the screen. These movies are ensembles for really most of them. But you're still kind of waiting always to see Milla. She does have that thing, like you said, what we're missing so much nowadays is that movie star good looks, movie star power, screen presence, the Tom Cruise effect. But I know I mentioned that everybody hates these movies, right? I say that flippantly because I'm looking at the Rotten Tomato scores and they're anywhere between 19 and 37% at its highest. Metacritic between 33 and 49 at its highest. Milla, I think, brings in the demographics as well. You know, like I'm sure these skew male, but I'll tell you right off the bat, and I think you did as well, but I rewatched these with my fiance, and she's a fan of these movies. And she rarely joins me for these these podcast episodes, but we made a plan to watch all 6 together over the course of like 2 months. Don't get me wrong, she needed 2 months to watch them all, but I think Milla's star power crosses a demographic line, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to bring up this as well. You have another connection to this franchise. Mm-hmm. Your favorite movie of all time,
yes,
is Night of the Living Dead.
This is true.
So I was actually surprised to hear this. I've never known this until, you know, putting the notes and stuff together for this episode. But one George A. Romero was the original intended writer for this franchise. He had directed a commercial for the video game, Resident Evil 2, I believe.
Very cool commercial. Obviously, you can find it online. Yep.
And then right away, they signed him to make the movie, and it was very inspired by the games and true to form. And for whatever reason, things did not work. I know there's like a documentary. I have never seen this documentary. Have you? There was one released January of 2025. It was a documentary based on this adaptation.
You should go read my review for the documentary, which I savaged. I hate the documentary.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's a terribly made documentary. It's like it's literally one of those documentaries where like it's like it should be like a 20-minute YouTube video. There's no reason you can't summarize this whole story in a 20-minute YouTube video, and instead it's a 2-hour documentary, and like the entire second half is just the narrator like reading an article that was published about George Romero's Resident Evil script. You know, just kind of going through. It's like it's so bad. I just think it's like so. I wouldn't recommend the documentary to anyone unless it's like you know nothing about the story and you really want to learn it. But I would just say there's nothing in the documentary you couldn't learn faster from just reading the plethora of articles that are online.
Sure.
And in fact, that Romero Resident Evil script has been online forever, and I certainly read it years ago. So yeah, I remember when that was all going down. This was at a time where, you know, this was before Land of the Dead. So this is when we just had the initial Dead trilogy of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. And for a long time, it really seemed like Romero would probably never get to visit zombies again. And then people do have to remember that the Resident Evil game is really one of the main things that kind of kickstarts that resurgence of zombie media, you know, which then leads into like 28 Days Later and Shaun of the Dead and the Dawn of the Dead remake, which is what ultimately allows George Romero to make Land of the Dead. But before that, the closest he comes is this. And it's interesting that, of course, they ask him to direct the commercial because I think Capcom and the developers of the game, they've always been pretty open and honest about how the games are a tribute to him and his movies.
Sure.
So it made sense, and I'm sure it made sense to their mind to then invite him to do the movie. And I think there was a lot of people, including myself, who did find that very exciting. Now, here's what I'll say is I ultimately, like years ago, I managed to get my hands on a copy of that script. And certainly, I think that was after I'd already seen like the Milla one, and I was like, you know, I liked that movie, but there was still a part of me that was always bemoaning that we didn't get the Romero one. And then I read the Romero script, and this kind of goes back to your earlier question about like fealty to IP and why we'd forgive this and sometimes get, you know, uppity about it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes something can be like have too much fealty, you know, and sometimes it can be too close. And I read that script and I really got the feeling that it was like, I don't know, this just feels like a scene by scene recreation of the game. And nothing about it seemed that exciting to me, you know? So I think, I mean, obviously it's unfortunate for Romero that his career was kind of his later half of his career is like defined by all these projects he almost got to do and didn't quite happen, especially on studio levels. And usually they fell apart because he was someone that had a very strong independent spirit and didn't really ultimately want to answer to all the concessions he would have to make on a studio level. And I think that played a part in this, but also just, I honestly do think that what Anderson ends up doing with this franchise is more interesting than just the version we would have got from Romero, which is basically just like sitting down and watching your friend play the game. You know what I mean? Because it's just kind of the game scene by scene.
Which we've talked a lot about video games recently, which is kind of interesting. We did a whole like fighting video game series earlier this year, so go check that out. But obviously, video games are having a resurgence right now. But not, I wouldn't even say a resurgence in the film form. I mean, I guess a success, really.
Yeah, it's
like,
more like they finally unlocked it.
Yeah,
you know?
The weird thing to me is that, like The Last of Us, okay? So another zombie project video game that is huge right now, may not be anymore, by the way. But the first season was a gigantic hit. And I watched the first season. I'm a big fan of both those games. Come at me if you don't like that second game. And, well, it's fine to not like it, but it's not fine to be an asshole about it. But the first game truly was like shot for shot. For the most part, like very, very.
The first season of the show.
Yeah. The first season of the show was so close, and I remember being like, okay, well, this show is great if you haven't played the game.
Yeah.
But like you're saying now, for somebody that was playing the game and loved it, I was watching this show being like, what's the point? And the second season deviated a bit as well, but for really bad, horrible reasons. and I don't want to litigate that at all here, especially because you didn't watch it, and I don't care because I didn't like really stick with it. But the first season was, yes, shot for shot the game, and that is disappointing, which is weird because it's like this. Oh man, it's so hard to talk about IP related cinematic interpretations, right? Because if you have something so cinematic already. And really, even the Resident Evil games are fairly cinematic, with their how the camera works, and anyway, they played a lot. We'll talk about that next episode. But it seems so creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, it's tricky. There's a really like fine line to walk between making an accurate adaptation and making something that then becomes redundant because it is so accurate. Mm-hmm. And I think what you see with something like the Romero script and even I guess somewhat you said the thing about how like The Last of Us is a really great show as long as you haven't played the game because it doesn't feel redundant. I think sometimes there's this mentality on the Hollywood side of saying like, well, we're making this for the people who didn't play the game, right? This is introducing the story to a larger audience. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes they're forgetting, I think Hollywood still has a cockiness where they think of themselves as like the bigger industry or like so above video games. But like with a project like Resident Evil, I really read that script and felt like these games are so popular, there's no need to like just tell the story that everyone's already played.
Yeah.
The bulk of your paying audience is actually going to be the people who enjoyed the game. So why not give them something different? And that's why I actually applaud the idea that Anderson had to say, yeah, this is in the world of the games, but the story I'm telling is taking place before the game. I'm setting it all up for you. I think that is to me ultimately a little bit more compelling.
Yeah, and I liked his mantra here. He talks about how it's his belief that horror films rely on unpredictability, to be scary, and adhering to storylines and characters and video game elements would be like too familiar to be frightening, and then also just primarily appeal to diehard fans. And I think he's proven right that he decided to make more of a general public introduction to this world with a Paul W.S. Anderson twist. Like by not adhering to the games and really going out on his own from the start, he just wasn't constricted. And then also the audience just had more of a mass appeal. And I think that this franchise in general has a very global appeal.
That's
the worldwide
why,
box office is huge.
I know we keep being flippant about it, and I think we should maybe like kind of, even just kind of catch ourselves a little bit when we keep saying everyone hates these.
Sure.
I know we are just joking, but this is actually one of those series that really shows that clear divide. And I kind of hate this as like as an idea, but there is some truth to it. A clear divide between like the normies and like the critics, right? Because when we're talking about people hating it, we are talking about like the really kind of like full of themselves critics, especially of the time. But obviously like just general audiences were enjoying these. And I also think, and I think you'd agree with this as well, in more recent years, I've kind of seen more critics, like respected critics that I like, like David Sims, The Atlantic, for example. I've noticed like their scores for these movies on Letterboxd as being quite high, and so like, this is what always happens too, right? Enough time passes, and suddenly people go like, oh, we actually kind of had it pretty good with those Resident Evil movies, didn't we? Compared to like what we're getting now, and I think even like the overall like reaction to these movies, the overall reputation of them, and the reputation of Paul W.S. Anderson as like a filmmaker, I think has like kind of improved like in more recent years. So there's something to be said for that too. So when we say everyone hates them, we're talking about the critical reaction they had at the time, but obviously they're pretty beloved, or else there wouldn't be 6 movies and we wouldn't be doing this episode.
And also, I can't believe we haven't even mentioned it yet, but Paul W.S. Anderson made Mortal Kombat. You know, the original Mortal Kombat movie, which to this day, many people say is still the kind of benchmark for where a video game should be, you know, but by being Hollywood and taking enough game elements, but doing its own thing. The issue we talked about this during our fighting video game series was that it wasn't bloody enough, which we agree. I think it was for PG-13, that movie. Mm-hmm. But, you know, this guy, you know, he's actually tested before and he made a very successful movie.
He had also already done Event Horizon, which I know wasn't a box office hit, but is like, I mean, especially in my horror circles, that is a beloved movie. And I think it is a great movie. It's a great horror film. I'm not, as I said, I'm certainly not here to trash or dismiss Paul W.S. Anderson. Now, I don't like every movie he's made. In fact, we've done, you know, we did like his Three Musketeers movie, which I was not a fan of, you know, and there are other Paul W.S. Anderson movies I don't like. I don't like AVP very much. So I don't have a blind allegiance to him, but nor will I sit there and listen to people say he's just trash, he's just junk. Yeah. I know people like roll their eyes when I talk about him as like an auteur, but I think there is like an auteur vision to him. And in fact, what we were just saying about how he approached Resident Evil, as you were talking about that, you know what actually flashed in my mind was how the way he looks at Resident Evil and how to adapt it is very similar to how recently Noah Hawley decided to work with Alien, right? To say like, oh, with Alien Earth, like, right? Like Noah Hawley, this like great TV creator did, you know, it's done Fargo and Legion and was offered a chance to do an Alien show. And it would have been very easy, I think, to just make something that has just as like, you know, an 8-hour version of the first Alien movie or Aliens, which were the 2 movies he really cared about. And instead he just used the world of Alien and like the trappings of it to actually tell this like very different, more complex, big story. How successful it ultimately was by the end can be debated, but I think like that's what we kind of want these filmmakers to do with these IPs, right? To say like, take what's intriguing about the IP and then see what you can do with it that's interesting to you on a more conceptual level, and see what ideas you can bring to it. So yes, I am comparing Alien Earth to Resident Evil, but I think it is, and again, on an auteur sense, I think that's actually very similar. It's saying like, Paul W.S. Anderson obviously likes the idea of this world. He likes some of the like the visual, you know, iconography of it. He likes some of the characters, but he didn't want to be beholden to just telling the same exact story. If you want those, there's a great series of Resident Evil novelizations by S.D. Perry. They're actually pretty fun. Go ahead and read those, or play the games. But like for the movie series, why not do something totally different and have some fun with it? Yeah.
Alien Earth also got just silly as well.
So, well, that's also what happens sometimes.
It's funny, right? How I like your analogy. The more I think about it, yeah. I also think this series has had such appeal because it goes for the action crowd. You know, like I know you're the horror guy. Like I always say that you're the horror guy. Yeah. It's arguable to say that this is horror at all after the first movie. So it really appeals to action fans. And
I call it, these are sci-fi action movies. Yeah.
Totally. So like, I don't want to say I'm the action guy. That's not what I mean. But I do like my big dumb action, maybe more than you do. Even sometimes, you know, like I do like my. Give me an explosion, you know. Give me a slow-mo helicopter, you know, and you got me. And this is it consistently delivers for your action crowd. And I think once you go into that mindset watching these movies, you can have a blast with them, and as silly as they can be. But also what I love about this series, I would not say that this series is tongue-in-cheek in the way that these characters are taking the subject matter deathly serious. Yeah. There's very little humor in these movies, which is funny to think about. It's the humor that you're having is just in the outrageousness that's going on.
Yeah, there's jokes here and there. There are like comic relief characters, but like you said, it's never winking at the audience.
it's
just
not.
like it's more like that. You're more meant to believe that's just a naturally funny person,
Yes.
or something. Or,
What's
our
the
situation is someone funny.
Is that wink action? Is that what we somebody coined it recently?
Yeah, Sean Fennessy of the Big Picture coined it. Like,
Yeah.
And
I don't think that this franchise, goes into that territory. That's why I think I like it unironically, because I feel like the movies are unironic. Like, am I crazy in thinking
No,
that?
I think you're right. I think Paul W.S. Anderson takes these very seriously, actually, and I think that's what I respect. And that's not to say, I think he's very aware that they're silly. I think he's aware that they are schlock. But this is what separates the good schlock directors from the cynical, hacky schlock directors.
Yeah, the Asylum people,
Yeah, and I do enjoy the Asylum, but on a different level, right?
Yes,
because
I get
exactly because of this, right? Like, you watch those to laugh at them and make fun of them, but I'm not making fun of. As I said, I'm not making fun of these movies because I think he understands that there is a place for schlock, because we have lizard brains, right? There's a part of our lizard brain that ultimately wants sexy men and women fighting monsters in cool slow-mo visuals, with awesome music playing, and that will work if it's done well and taken seriously. And he understands it's silly, he understands it's goofy, but if he treats it seriously and puts it in a serious world and does not wink at the audience, it works, right? It's the same, and it's on the same level. It's that Zucker Brothers idea, right, of how parody will work better if the actors act like they're in a serious film. Don't let them act like they're in a comedy, because it'll be funnier if they're treating it seriously and the humor's going across naturally. That's true of these as well. The situations, the world can get as ridiculous as you want, and it'll be entertaining as long as the characters seem to think it's life or death stakes. Like, that still works. Yeah.
Totally. So in saying how much our characters care about what the hell is going on in these movies, let's, I guess, give a little bit more than my log lines last time about what these 6 movies are and what kind of happens within them. We're not going to do like this giant plot synopsis thing. Like, if you want that, go to IMDb, or honestly just watch them. But we'll give our little bit here, like starting with the first one, Resident Evil 2002.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you are coming to this expecting it to be, as we said, right, if you're expecting it to be the game, it's not that. If you're expecting it to even be like, those first Resident Evil games are legit scary.
Yep.
They are scary to play. They are also primarily known as zombie action games. If you're expecting a lot of zombie action in this, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But as we said, this is instead a prequel about a series of characters, including our main character, Alice, who it starts the movie as an amnesiac, who wakes up in a mansion and does not remember who she is or why she's there. And then her and a host of other characters, a SWAT team of sorts, have to descend into the Hive, the secret base of the Umbrella Corporation. And the Umbrella Corporation are the main antagonists of this series. They are to the rest of to the world at large, they're seen as just a pharmaceutical company, just a good-natured corporation, as they all are, of course, right? But in fact, they are weapons manufacturers and developing bioweapons to sell to the rest of the world. And they have this secret facility under Raccoon City called the Hive, and they've been developing something called the T-Virus. The T-Virus has gotten loose, and now our main characters have to descend into the Hive to try and shut it all down and take out the rogue AI program called the Red Queen that is controlling the Hive. So that is the general idea of the first film.
Should we? I'm just going to get this out here because we like to do our rankings of the franchises. Should we just give our thoughts individually as we do in here, and then afterwards,
that's why I kind of want to go through them one by one, because I think it's easier to say like what do we think about each one on like a basic level.
Great, let's do that. So like I guess you gave the synopsis. May I go first? Is that okay?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is such a 2002 movie.
Yep.
It's got the rock score going on. It's got
Marilyn Manson did help with the score. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's got. This is like a big nostalgia play for me too. Like, again, I like these movies to varying degrees, and I own the franchise and everything. And this is the one that started, and I think this one should be talked in the same vein as we talk about Mortal Kombat. This is how you do it. There's some really good stuff here. There's some really good thrills. I think it kind of gets the game right in like its environments, some pacing, the bioweapon shenanigans. You got a monster zombie and you got dog zombies. I mean, those are right from the game. So there's some like really like iconic stuff here, like the laser cubing. You know, that's a great scene that everybody remembers when what's his name, James. I can't remember the last name of the character, but James, played by Colin Salmon. He gets cubed by the lasers, and that's awesome. That's just a way to go.
It is important to say that it's funny because you keep calling it cubed. It is funny that like one of the most famous like iconic moments from this franchise, which they keep revisiting, was actually pretty much just stolen from another movie, Cube. But
totally. You know. Yeah. and then Paul W.S. Anderson does it again in the Alien vs. Predator. By the way, do you remember that?
Yeah.
To the same character, same actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just kind of real quick. I think this movie's great. It's just a really good adaptation, and it's got a great hook. The amnesia stuff is always great. That's always a great hook. And Milla Jovovich starts out naked right away, and I can't say nothing wrong about that. But
jeez.
Yeah, well, whatever. Hey, well, I've had to. I threatened you with the hose already prior to this episode. Also, Michelle Rodriguez is in this. And
I was going to say, we get two badass women in this movie.
Yeah, this is a movie built for Michelle Rodriguez. I think she's just awesome in this. It's the perfect role for her, coming off of Fast and Furious fame. This is a good movie. This is a good entry. This does just enough of what we want from a franchise starter. This gives you the hook, and you're excited to see what's next. And you're into this main character. You like the world. It does a lot of good stuff in the world building. And I think, this is kind of one of those benchmark movies for how to get a franchise going, obviously. But Trev, what do you think?
Well, it's funny because, I said I like this entire franchise, right? But I'm also very aware, and I said I like them unironically, and that's true, and I will keep advocating that. But I do think with every entry after this, I always feel like when I explain how I like them, I have to be like, well, this is why I like them. I have to put up a little bit more of a defense.
Yeah.
This is the one where I'm kind of like with you, and I know not everyone would agree because I know there's a lot of people who still think this movie is trash. But this one I kind of look at and I go like, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that people are so dismissive of this one because I think this is, like you just said, I think this is actually just a really good, really effective kind of like sci-fi horror hybrid action movie. Mm-hmm. I can see maybe being a little upset that it's not quite the Resident Evil movie you were expecting to get, but I agree with you that actually I think it works very well as like a prequel actually to the games. I think I've had no problem at the time feeling like this could coexist with the games in the same continuity. Obviously that would change with later entries, but I thought this one worked quite well. And I'm glad you brought up the mystery. I actually think Paul W.S. Anderson, for what people want to say, but this is what I mean. This is why I think he's better than people give him credit for. He actually is really good at things like basic structure and like creating like through lines that will hook you and pull you through. Mm-hmm. The development throughout the running time of the movie about learning a little bit more about who Alice is and like what she was doing in the mansion, what her true allegiances are, what her role is there. It's just handled very, very well, and I think it pulls you right along and builds to like a really fun final act. And this movie rules. I think like it's.
Alice was like a newborn. She woke up with no memory. She was the audience in a sense. She discovered the world as we, the audience, discovered it. There's this dynamic between being completely innocent and then also being a complete master at what you do. I love to play with that, to be able to kind of like confuse myself a bit and confuse the audience a bit and humanize it. She was definitely a child being led into a very dark place, having to be baptized by fire in a sense.
You're definitely right that it's a very 2002. I think in my most recent review, I said that this movie is full of like 2002 aura farming moments, like the fact of like the moment where the movie like grinds to a halt. So Milla can like run up a wall and do like a flying drop kick on the dog. And totally. Just like this like techno, like rock blaring while it happens. And just anytime there's like a shootout and doing like the very cool shooting poses, even no matter if that's something a tactical team would really do, it's full of all that kind of shit. And guess what? I'm here for it because we don't get that anymore. So it's also just a fun nostalgic look back at like that era. I definitely like this one quite a bit.
So Resident Evil Apocalypse comes out 2 years later. This is the sequel that Alexander Witt directs, and Paul Anderson goes to make AVP. This is happening like basically right after the events of the first movie. At the end of this, I don't want to. Well, again, I don't really want to spoil tons of stuff. Like, I mean, I'm sure we can. Who cares? But I guess this is like right after the T virus is set loose upon Raccoon City.
And more importantly, I guess for fans of the games, you would be saying, I think they did at the time, is this movie would be taking place concurrently with Resident Evil 2, the video game.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this. I mean, obviously, this was a success, but I have never been happy about this title of this movie. It should have been called Resident Evil Nemesis, because that is the plot of the movie. It is in the games. There's a bioweapon hybrid mutant called Nemesis that they're creating. It's like a big hulking monster man, for lack of a better description. But this movie, it revolves around that and them needing to stop the Nemesis weapon from allowing Umbrella to really take hold of the situation. So there's a little bit of game elements. You get Jill Valentine is in the movie. So that's kind of cool from the game. But that's Apocalypse. Like, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. There's a lot of action in this one. This one is
if the first one was our characters trying to make it out of a underground base, this one is our characters trying to make it out of a city.
Correct.
You love a ticking clock, and here we have a nuke that is going to go off in the city, so they need to make it out before then. Yeah. And then seeing how like the evolution of the Alice character, who suddenly has been kind of like reborn in a way with new powers. So trying to discover like what's going on with her as well. Look, for some of these, I'm just going to read like a part of what I wrote about them when I just recently reviewed them, because it's kind of the easiest way for me to just sum up my thoughts. Yeah. And I said, here's what I think about this one. I said, the first Resident Evil was arguably a bad movie pretending to be a good one. And hey, to be clear, go look at my review for that movie. I mean that in a positive way. That said, Resident Evil Apocalypse is under no such illusions. It's total schlock, and it knows it's total schlock, and I also love that. And I go on to say, it's absolutely wild something this gleefully junky was not only given a big theatrical release, but also managed to do well enough to keep the series alive for 4 more movies. We really did have it better back then, huh? And I remember that's how I felt when I saw this in the theater at the time. I went opening night, and I just couldn't believe I was seeing such a glorified B movie, like, with a fairly decent budget and some like kind of name actors. Here we get an actor I love. I'd imagine you do too. Oded Fair,
obviously
from the Mummy, and more recently from Star Trek Discovery, and soon to be in Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
Unless it gets canceled. Okay.
They filmed 2 seasons, but it'll get canceled after that. Don't worry. But it's not going to get any more than that. But at least he got some more paychecks out of it.
Yeah.
But no, I love Oded Fair, and bringing him in as Carlos is great here. And this movie is just such schlock, but so like lovingly schlock, and even like how it's so willing to just present Nemesis. First of all, I love that Nemesis is a man in a suit and not like CGI. I love that they just actually built this big kind of like monster kaiju suit for this guy to wear and tromp around in. The movie like knows how like goofy he is on screen, but never shies away from it. They don't hide him in shadow. They don't like play it coy or anything. They're just like, no, you all came to see Nemesis. We're gonna fucking give you Nemesis, and that's kind of like the attitude of this whole movie. So I think this one is. I do think this one is like trash, but like my kind of trash.
Yeah. No, I agree. I used, as you know, and some of our listeners do, I used to work at the movie theater when I was young. One of my first jobs, I worked for Cineplex Odeon here in Canada, and it was right around this time in 2004. So I watched so much of this movie nonstop for like 3 weeks. And funnily enough, this recent rewatch, I still call it a rewatch, but this recent viewing was literally the first time I watched it from start to finish. Because again, I had seen just so much of it. And I'm with you. It's actually crazy how quickly this series cruised right into schlock. Hey?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, because this is very tonally different than the previous movie.
Oh,
like,
yes.
Immediately, yeah.
This is nonstop gunfights and explosions. and I remember back in the day, people hating the Nemesis design and suit, which is strange because I think he looks pretty good. Like, he still looks like a bulky man in a suit. However, I say that with the knowledge we have in 2025, knowing that if this movie was remade today, this would be a CGI thing. Right? Yep. With nothing tangible to it, nothing at all. So I actually like really loved the prosthetics and effects here. I think he needs to be bigger, but I thought the Nemesis monster was great. And yeah, this is just a lot of fun. And you know what? You add Sienna Gilroy? Gilroy? Okay.
I always say Gilroy, but I don't know if that's right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
she's a great Jill Valentine. She looks exactly like she does in the game. And I think it's fun. Like this is just a fun time. And
honestly, I'm going to tell you something else I mentioned in my review too. This might be a sign of the times. Maybe this is just something about 2004. But when I saw this opening night in the theater, like every line Mike Epps said just killed. Like you would have thought he was like that was the height of comedy for people in 2004 was Mike Epps. Like people like love that character.
Shit! Maybe I was safer outside. Get them guns out of my damn face. Motherfucker, please, look. My shit is custom.
Really quickly, I do also want. I'm going to do this for every movie. Maybe you can, if you want to join in, if you disagree with me or have a different take on it. But we should say, I'm going to just quickly say what I think is like the most like memorable like iconography or moment from each one. I think we would agree the first movie is the laser grid. I think that's what I definitely remember. This one too.
And second running dog kick.
Dog kick, yeah.
Dog kick.
For this one, it was the highlight of the trailer. I remember being excited about it in the trailer, and then in the movie, it pays off. It is that visual of Milla Jovovich running down the side of the Toronto City Hall where they film like the finale. It's just so cool. Like right, and I actually said in my review, it's kind of like it's almost like she did that. She ran down the side of Toronto City Hall so that Tom Cruise could later scale the Burj Khalifa. It's kind of like the early version of that.
One of my favorite stunts. There's a few, to be honest, but it was Resident Evil 2, and I ran down a 60-foot wall, like straight down. And the only thing that's coming to meet me is concrete. I mean, we did this so many times, and I've never been so terrified in my life, but also just feeling so badass that I was actually doing it myself.
That's great. And then also the throwing her motorcycle in the church. Yeah, that's mine with the liquors like on the side of the church. Those are cool designs. They actually
amazing where she comes blasting into the church on her motorcycle to save them, even though there's no way she could have known that they were in danger on the outside of the church.
Yes, again, apocalypse, pure schlock. Like really,
it don't care.
Truly,
it just don't care, and that's what we gotta love about it.
No. Okay, Resident Evil Extinction, 2007. 3 years later, plot me, baby.
Okay, this one we should quickly say, directed by Russell Mulcahy, the director of one of my all-time favorite movies, Highlander. I don't know that you'd necessarily know that watching this movie, but he is who takes over. As we said, this is essentially, rather than go like super, super in-depth on this one, I think it's just easiest to say this is the Mad Max one. This is a few years after Apocalypse, and we learned that our heroes basically, they were not successful in stopping the Umbrella Corporation and the T-Virus. In fact, in the 5 years or so it's passed, the T-Virus has wiped out most of humanity, and in fact, to the point that even like the desert has come in and like overtaken much of like the Southwest, including like all of Vegas, right? So now our remaining characters exist in this post-apocalyptic desert wasteland, and we are following a convoy of characters, including the video game character favorite Claire Redfield, here played by Heroes Ally Larder. And she is with Carlos. And
first of all, I love that Heroes Ally Larder. That's fantastic.
That's what I'll always. I know. I mean, obviously, I obviously Final Destination as well, but I'll just always think of her as Heroes Ally Larder.
Totally. That's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, she's Claire Redfield. She's like leading this convoy that's trying to get like, this small band of remaining humans to safety. And then at the same time, on a parallel path is Alice, who is since like separated herself from the rest of her heroes because she feels like being around her might put them in danger, because she has started to learn that there's something more going on with her, like on a genetic level. She might have a deeper connection to the Umbrella Corporation than she initially believed. And she now fears she is like a liability. And meanwhile, the remaining, the few remaining elements of the Umbrella Corporation are also still existing underground. They have been trying to like kind of recreate what happened with Alice and how she bonded with the T-Virus by creating all these Alice clones and running these like simulations, but they never quite work. So they just have like this trench full of dead Alices. And yeah, so this one just ultimately just kind of builds to, again, just like as you said, this was at one time meant to be the final movie in the series. So it's kind of building to this like this final confrontation between our heroes and the Umbrella Corporation in this kind of like Mad Max setting. So yeah, that's Extinction. I'm going to let you kind of go first on this one again, because I want to hear your thoughts on this one before I.
Yeah, because I think you are against the grain on this one. If I believe.
Yeah.
So I like this one a lot, and I think most do. I don't want to speak for most fans of this franchise, but I know Extinction is pretty high on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like that it's different. I like how Russell Mulcahy pushed for it to be brighter, to be different, to be outside. I like all that stuff. I think Milla looks awesome with her like trench coat and her double machetes. Those are fucking sweet. It's got, speaking of iconic moments, it's when the birds blow up. That's the iconic moment of
when she uses her psychic abilities with the birds, but a great visual. Yeah.
By the way, first time we've mentioned that she has psychic abilities. By the way, so she's got psychic abilities, and she makes all the zombie birds explode, and it's like this. It's like that's the moment that even my fiance Brittany like turned to me. She's like, "That's the bird moment. Like the bird moment's coming up." And like that was like, I think it was on the posters. It was in every single trailer. That was like the trailer moment. So that's my pick. But I like this one a lot. I love Apocalypse, but there's something with the hyperactive editing, which I will return to soon. But the editing in Apocalypse is not great. So this one takes its time to slow it down. It does reverse a little bit back from the schlock. But I just like this one. I don't know. There's again, I think it's different, and it's a nice outlier visually, even from the franchise. But I enjoy this one a lot. I know you're gonna push back, so go ahead.
Well, no, the thing is, I actually agree with everything you just said, and to be fair, on this rewatch for this episode, this was the most I enjoyed it. Was this
Sorry,
watch.
the most you enjoyed it? You cut out a little bit, but this is the most you enjoyed it.
This is the most I've ever enjoyed this one.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
for this rewatch. Yeah. So this time I was more into it than usual. But yeah, I mean, I've always had like just a slight pushback against this one. It's not that I ever hated it. It's just that I always felt like for me, it was kind of a dip from Apocalypse for exactly the same reason you just said, is that I think there was a part of me that was kind of almost disappointed to see it try to be serious again after the schlock of Apocalypse. But I definitely agree. Like, look, you have Russell Mulcahy, who has an incredible visual eye. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Highlander.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
And I don't think there's any doubt that this is the best looking of the first three. The desert setting is great. The zombie makeup in this movie is fantastic. I think my issue with this one is that whereas the first movie I thought was like this really cool kind of like hybrid, prequel to the game, and then the second movie was kind of this like, as I said, just like gleeful schlock that was just like so kind of unique because you don't necessarily see that on like that budget level. When I watch this one, I feel a movie built entirely of influences, right? You can look at the movie and go like, oh, there's Mad Max. Oh, there's Day of the Dead. There's The Birds, right? And it's like, and every time it's in one of those sequences, even if they're fun, I know I'm seeing the lesser version of all of those things because it's never as good as The Birds. It's never as good as Mad Max. It's never as good as Day of the Dead. So that's kind of where this one like kind of just like slightly sinks a little bit for me. I don't hate it by any means. It's just the one that for that reason, I think it doesn't, even though it has its own unique identity within the franchise, I feel oddly enough, it doesn't have its own unique identity unto itself, if that makes sense. So
that, you know what? Totally valid. Yeah. Like I can't even push back on that. I will add that I do really like the inclusion of Claire Redfield in this. I didn't say that before, but she's an inclusion from the game, and I really like Ali Larter. It's a shame that they dropped Jill Valentine in this movie, but at least they brought in Claire Redfield. And also, Ian Glenn is in this movie, so I like him as Dr. Isaacs. So the cast is really building in this one, in my opinion. So that's another thing. But I totally understand what you're getting at. I would push back that this is not better than The Birds, because, I mean, that bird explosion, I can't tell you how much I like that series.
Yeah, you're right. This is better than Hitchcock's The Birds. That fucking hack. We also do get the introduction of Wesker in this one, but he's played by Jason Mara and nobody cares, so we'll get back to the better version of Wesker in a moment.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Resident Evil Afterlife 2010. 3 years later, after they realized, hey, we're still making bank, baby, so let's make another one. Paul Anderson comes back for this, and people are wondering why. Why isn't he going off to make more, other stuff, more even originals? Just do something else. He's, he has stock in Hollywood now and credit and everything. Well, he comes back because this movie came out. I don't know if you remember this movie. I'm going to keep the bit alive. 2009. It was a little film called Avatar.
Yeah.
And James Cameron.
I've heard of it.
You have. Okay, good. A lot of people haven't. But
we'll do it. We'll obviously do it on this show someday, since it bombed and didn't create a franchise.
everybody forgot about it. okay, James Cameron and Vince Pace created a fusion camera system for 3D technology and kind of revitalized how 3D is made. And it doesn't have to be post-conversion anymore. You can actually film it in camera, and it just looks, and it's just very exciting. It's a very exciting new piece of technology. So Paul Anderson, after all this new technology, he is like, I want to come back and put this brand new cool tech into my franchise. And also, I guess his thoughts of the franchise going forward is going to become like major global scale and attention to these three, or the next foray of the plot. I don't know what's going on. I'm like Paul at this point. He has an idea, and he goes wild with this one because Afterlife is going to be hard for me to explain. So
I think it's safe to say, I think what you're trying to get at, and I would say the second half of the series, the last three, are definitely more idea driven than narrative driven.
Great way to say it.
I have a cool idea for a moment or a sequence. How do we fit that in, Paul? I said I have a cool idea for a moment or a sequence. Let's just do it. Okay, do we need to worry about getting this all to fit together? I have a cool idea for a moment or a vision. That's what these are.
And Afterlife is that. It is let's make our characters look as cool as they've ever looked with this technology. Let's have a lot of Millas running around, a lot of Alices running around because they have a bunch of clones. But then get rid of the clones and then stumble upon a prison and hire the guy from Prison Break to be trying to escape the prison. And you meet new characters. Again, Chris Redfield, played by Wentworth Miller from Prison Break, is in this. So we get a reunion of sorts within the video game lore in this movie. But basically they are in this prison, and they got to get out of this prison and surrounded by zombies, and they got to get to a boat. Mm-hmm. That's the movie. But what I'm leaving out is the total fucking insanity that is Afterlife.
I just have to read from my Letterboxd review again,
please,
if you don't mind. I said, I do think that with Afterlife, the Resident Evil series takes on a new, dare I say, perfected form, setting aside any concerns about plot cohesion, emotional stakes, narrative plausibility, and any other factors typically associated with, quote, good movies, end quote. Resident Evil is barely interested in being a movie. It's a hypercharged montage of how cool is this shit moments, designed to excite young children who don't know any better and older adults who do know better but just don't care because either they love schlock or are simply immune to the magical charms of a water-soaked Milla Jovovich and Ellie Larder blasting an inexplicable giant axe man in the face with a shotgun full of quarters. And that is exactly it. This is style over substance perfected.
100%.
This is a movie that is just entirely worried and concerned with giving you like a thrill of what you're seeing and getting you jacked by like the score. Excellent Tom and Dandy score, Tom and Dandy score, which I still listen to score all the time. Awesome score, awesome visuals. No story to speak of. It's just like, there's like so little going on in this movie. And even the fact of like having the Axeman show up, who's from like the later Resident Evil games, but at least was like explained in those games because of the growing mythology there. No rationale for what the fuck the Axeman would be in this universe. He just shows up because Paul saw those in the games, was like, that's cool, we got to have it in there, right?
And the Resident Evil 5 zombie designs with like the tentacles coming out of their mouths.
Yes,
that's all from RE5, which is a game I have a personal relationship with. Me and a buddy of mine played that game co-op online. I love RE5. So this came out right after that game. So this is very heavily influenced on that game as well with the design stuff, like you're saying. And the set pieces, like Axeman, are pretty fucking great. That's the best moment. The slow-mo, dive underneath the swinging axe in the rain with the water coming down. Fucking badass.
I'd give it that, and I'd also give just a special shout out to the opening credits of this one, which is that like the great score playing over the slow-mo of just the woman standing in the middle of like the crosswalk in Tokyo, and you're just like waiting to see what's happening there. Just because like also like the nice kind of like playing with time and continuity there, because the previous movie left us in this like Mad Max apocalypse, and now we're going back but not realizing it and seeing like what is happening here. And even just like the fun of like you said, like the last movie ending on this like cliffhanger, like, oh my God, she's got an entire army of Alice's now. And this movie just being like, yeah, we'll get rid of that in like the first 5 minutes. And just the way that the franchise keeps doing that, like every cliffhanger is nullified almost immediately in the next one. But you just don't care because, again, the movies are just having fun at this point.
Yeah,
and this...
Well, I was just going to say, the narrative cheats in this movie are unreal. That's
the narrative cheats are insane. And that's just that this movie, actually, I think this comes really close to being this like bizarre hybrid almost of like cheesy sci-fi action, but also like art film.
Yeah,
like,
avant-garde.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's cinema, baby. Yeah, Afterlife is a lot of fun. I saw this at a preview screening. So one of those like that are put on for like radio stations and stuff. So this holds a special place. I have my little letterbox entry. Do you mind if I read out my first line?
No,
of it?
I've been doing it. Go for it.
Remember when we wrote ourselves into a corner with endless superhuman clones of our heroine, ready to take on Umbrella once and for all? Never mind. All it takes is a syringe and a big explosion to cancel that. So.
Oh, we should say the other secret sauce that is added in this one that is like a saving grace for the final three is that Sean Roberts takes over the role of Wesker.
Yeah.
And giving one of the all-time great B-movie mustache twirling villain performances, right? There's not an inch of scenery that this guy's not chewing.
You weren't too hard to find. Our satellite system is still operational, and there aren't too many people flying nowadays. Besides, I always knew you'd be drawn to your friends. Loyalty, highly overrated. Stop. Down. Wouldn't want you harming my pets.
He gets the assignment, as people like to say, right? Totally. He knows what movie he's in, and just the relish he delivers every line with. Like, he does not talk like, and granted, it kind of actually is reminiscent to how bizarre like some of the vocal deliveries were in the game cutscenes, but I just think like the way he plays that character is just like so unique and so bizarre. He's like this like human snake hybrid somehow, and just the way he's delivering the lines, and he's just great. I love Sean Roberts as Wesker.
And for people that don't know the video game, Wesker is kind of like the big bad of the Resident Evil franchise of the video games, and he looks just like he does in the game and the movie. I don't know about the characteristics and the like you said, anyways, Sean Roberts is great. He totally gets it.
This is also my favorite Alice look. I'll just quickly say the Afterlife costume is
so good.
That's my favorite one. Yeah, I think her like outfit like rules in this one.
It was between this and Extinction for me. Just letting you know. I just like that dual machetes. That's always so fun. This one though, she gets the dual shotguns though. Oh, with the quarters. With the quarters in them. Yeah. Okay, Resident Evil Retribution 2012. They pumped this one out pretty quick, 2 years from the last one.
Well, that's because number 4, as we said, fueled by like the 3D element of it. Number 4 suddenly, the other ones had like topped out at like around 120, 150. Part 4 makes 300 million globally. Yeah, so they're like, oh shit, we've got a massive franchise in our hands now, and we know what people want. They want 3D, Milla. They want more of that, right? And apparently they don't want story. So
no. You said the last one was devoid of plot. I'm just going to say, Retribution has no plot. Retribution is the thinnest of all 6 movies. It's a bunch of danger room sequences to fuck with Milla Jovovich, to fuck with Alice. You're bringing back old cast members that had died off, or other not cast members, but characters that had died off in like weird danger room sequences. This one is good. Again, I like them all. Right, for various reasons, but Retribution to me, because of how thin it is, bothers me. I also don't like that the Redfields are not in this one at all. In exchange, they bring on Leon from the games, Ada Wong from the games. They both look great. They look exactly like they do from the games. However, this one also takes the first 15 minutes and is just kind of like this rewind, fast forward thing of everything. Isn't that funny? Like, can you explain that better for me? Like the first, like,
so
the
movie,
main
well,
title
this is where,
sequence. Please tell me.
This is where you understand that I think because of the huge success of the previous one, Anderson's kind of feeling himself now.
Yes,
and he is now he has decided he wants to play this as like an exercise in style and like filmmaking, right? So he starts this movie with this, like, the last movie, of as they all do, ended on a cliffhanger with like our heroes being surrounded by Umbrella Corporation helicopters. And so you expect this movie to start with that scene, and of course it does, but actually starts where that scene has already happened, and we are watching it in reverse.
For 7 minutes.
For 7 minutes, we watch that scene play backwards. Then we get the typical Alice like voiceover that will start the movie, and then we watch the scene again and go forward, but like sped up. So we get to see it twice.
Oh, so funny.
It's just like no reason to do that other than him understanding how cool that backwards thing would be in slow-mo and 3D. And the movie is just kind of heavily predicated on that, right? As you said, this is essentially a table-setting movie where they just want to get the pieces in place for the finale, which is funny because ultimately the finale they preview is not even what they end up making.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get that. But as just table setting, as you said, this is just a movie that is like, it's kind of actually like playing on the idea of like weaponized nostalgia, and that it brings back dead characters from the previous movies. Like 3 of our formerly dead characters return as clones, some of them multiple clones throughout the movie. And like I said, it's placing them all in these like artificial environments. It's almost like telling the audience like this is all like artificial nostalgic bullshit.
Yes.
So it's like giving itself the freedom to be like, this is not a movie that is not about this. You don't have to worry about narrative. You don't have to worry about like anything making sense. You're just here to have fun. Let's not ask any questions. I get why that would be frustrating to you. That's why I like really kind of respect this one. You know what I mean? Like it's just 2 different ways of looking at it. I think this movie is like fascinating in how, if the last one was walking right up to the line of being an experimental art film, I would argue this one almost inarguably is, right? This is like as kind of weird and as bizarre as you can make a IP, like big budget kind of action movie. I think it's like Anderson is just like, this feels like a filmmaker who the reins are off and no one is like questioning him and no one is making him change anything. And that's what I think is kind of actually awesome about this one.
It's just a movie that doesn't have a beginning or an end. I think that's what it is for me. I still like it. It's still fun. Yeah. We turned this thing on and I looked at Brittany. I go, okay, when are we going to get the Milla voiceover? How long is she going to talk for to recap everything? Is she going to be naked in the flashback? Because I believe she's naked in all the flashbacks, and every single one of these movies start out with her wearing like a sheet. And how quickly will they negate the other movie? And I think Retribution, up to this point, is like the ultimate offender. For all of that at once. Again, it's fun, but it's so plotless, so thin. And like I really like your almost thesis, if we were to really dive into the psyche of the film and Paul Anderson being like, this is a play on nostalgia. And I truly wonder if he's doing that, and you're not just talking super film bro-y. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I want to give you props, but like it is interesting that this movie you can read between the lines, even if it's subconscious, on Paul Anderson's attempt.
Yeah, like the Umbrella Corporation is giving the audience what they want to see, right?
Totally.
By like cloning all of our heroes over and over and just saying, here's more of it, and here we're putting them in like, we're even putting them in like, representations of scenes from the previous movies and everything, right? It's just like, it's pretty blatant, I think. Do you have a sequence from this one that you remember or that you would highlight? To me, it's like, it's the final fight with, Alice versus Jill, like in the snow with the submarine coming out of the ice. And everything like that. Yeah, that final battle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Again, we should say that this one brings back Jill Valentine. So that's nice.
What I especially like, I know we don't want to get into spoilers, but whatever, this is just a slight spoiler. I like that Alice fights the brainwashed Jill for like 10 minutes before finally just pulling off the device that's brainwashing her, even though she knows from the previous movie that that's what she should do.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like they forgot while making as well.
Yeah.
So. And they didn't have the coverage.
Well, did they forget, or did Paul W.S. Anderson say, this movie will make $50 million more if I have Milla Jovovich and Sienna Gilroy fight in the ice for a while?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. 4 years go by. This is the longest break between movies, which again, you're thinking...
point where there was a point there about 2.5, 3 years in where I actually started to go like, oh no, maybe for some reason something went wrong and they're not going to do it. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, the reason why they weren't exactly striking while the iron was hot was Anderson was making 2014's Pompeii,
Yeah.
but
great.
also, wow. And then also Milla Jovovich was pregnant. So it was all about timing for this one. The only there was no like weird background deals or studio execs getting in the middle of things. It's literally like, hey, we made 2 movies, your biggest successes, within a span of probably 3 years, honestly.
Yeah.
And now they went home and they celebrated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Obviously. And here we are. It takes that long to get to the final chapter, and this time they mean it. This is another 3D movie, except this one is post-converted. This one, they did not shoot it with 3D.
Yeah.
Ali Larter returns as Claire. This is a movie that goes full circle in the most ridiculous way.
That rather than get into the whole plot of this one, we should just say that to bring this all full circle, this is a movie that presupposes that this actually has been a long planned storyline from the first movie.
Yes.
And this movie is supposedly tying all the narrative and mythological ends that were set up. And if you listen to Paul W.S. Anderson, he will claim that this is paying off all these things he was thinking about since the first movie. Bullshit. It had to do that. It has to contradict so many things from the middle 4 movies that's just so clearly not the case. But I think there's something admirable in its stupidity for the attempt, right? That's what I find whimsically entertaining about this movie. And I think actually, putting aside the fact that they are making it all up as they go along, like the answers they deliver and the story they tell to bring it full circle actually is kind of good. Right?
Yeah,
it actually kind of works in a way that's actually very, very compelling. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the silliness of inventing new mythology 6 films in.
Yeah, and your last one.
Yeah. And retroactively manufacturing a bookend to this franchise. So I really like that. I think it's very it's an interesting capper. And especially coming off of the virtual world of the Retribution, I do kind of like that it goes back to real life kind of post-apocalyptic setting. I gotta say though, the editing. Dude, this movie's called Repilepsy Evil. The final cut. I do not think there is a single shot that lasts more than 5 seconds in this whole movie.
The only pushback I'll give that, because this was my memory from when I saw it in the theater, and this rewatch did kind of confirm it with me. I think that really hyperactive editing, it's really egregious and really annoying in the first half, and I think it does calm down in the second half, and it's particularly like the third act. I think you
just got used to it.
I think there's probably a part of that. It's probably true, but I really do think
you just let it happen to you. You're just like, oh god, just let the torture.
There's probably an element of that, yeah. But I do think, I would argue also that it kind of finds itself and calms down a little in the end. But yeah, in general though, this was actually the problem. You mentioned how this one was post converted. This is actually kind of part of the problem with them waiting the 4 years, is that in that time the 3D craze died off.
Yeah.
And because this one was not shot in native 3D, that meant that he no longer had the excuse, or not the excuse, but the reasoning to do like the preponderance of like slow-mo and more clear kind of cinematography and bright cinematography, right? Because that's the thing about 3D. 3D works best when the imagery is bright, which you would say about the previous 2 movies, and also when shots last about 3 seconds, so your eye has time to like kind of take in the 3D image. They were worried about that with this one, clearly. Him and his new editor, who I do want to point out, the editor of this movie is named Doobie White. When you hire a guy named Doobie to do your editing, maybe that's a problem right off the bat. So
we don't like making fun of editors. We don't make fun of editors.
We don't like making fun of editors, no. But the visual style of this one, especially in that first half, is quite a bummer after how hyper stylized and how clear all the action was in the previous 2.
Yeah.
And I also say this one is the worst offender, even though it gets to a point, we were 6 movies in and now it's like funny to me, but this is the one where I'd say you start the movie and you almost immediately put me in a little bit of a bad mood, because I really did want to see the previous cliffhanger play out. And the fact that this one just totally poo-poos it aside and says that all happened off screen, this is the most frustrating example of that in the whole series.
Yeah, like I don't really want to give it away, but the end of Retribution is basically a global scale battle, okay, that they're hinting at, that sounded just incredible.
Yeah.
And then they realized that cost too much money. So they did not want to do that. So yes, this one is the most egregious timeline fuckery, in my opinion. So that's a knock against it. Again, though, Alice, you know, I just like seeing the character. I don't like seeing Ruby Rose. I think I think that's another negative towards this one.
Don't worry, it's not like she's crucial to this in any way or anything. Yeah.
But they bring back Claire Redfield in this one, and I'll just say that right now. I keep mentioning her. I love that character, and I really love Ali Larter. And anytime I see Ali Larter in movies, I'm excited. So I have a love-hate relationship with the franchise's treatment of Ali Larter and her character. I like the Redfields. I have a connection to them in the video games, and I think they're played really well by Ali Larter and Wentworth Miller. And it sucks that Wentworth Miller had one outing. That is the most egregious in my opinion.
Yeah, and the fact that she never even mentions his name in this one.
Oh my God, I know.
Says, like, no one says where's Chris. She doesn't bring him up at all. That's what kind of gets me.
Nothing.
In this one. And you can kind of tell in this one. I always think, like, my assumption is this screenplay was originally written for like a lot of like Chris was going to be there, and some of our other returning characters were going to, like, Jill was obviously going to be Ada Wong, Leon. I think they were all supposed to be there, and then for whatever reason, actor availability or whatever, they did not, because they suddenly add in all these new characters who you don't give a shit about. And then the movie acts like we should care when they die later, and you don't. And I'm just thinking, well, I guess I probably would have if that was Leon, or that was Chris, or that was Ada. So that's where it's like clear that this was like a reworking at a late stage, and like Ali Larter was the only person that could get back.
And the length of time it took. So I totally, people's schedules fill up. And I
to make up for that, though, we do get the return of Ian Glenn, who at this point was now riding the wave of like post Game of Thrones popularity. So it was very smart to bring him back as like, yes, he will be our final villain, actually. Like, as we said, there's no way that was actually planned, or else they just wouldn't have got rid of him in the third movie. But him getting to come back and playing a new kind of version of Dr. Isaacs. I love this like religious zealot like version of him. I think it's like such a cool addition, and I think it's like actually, I don't know that Paul W.S. Anderson was ever thinking about like really deep themes, but there is something about this character and like the connection of like hardcore religious fundamentalism and how it kind of takes over our like power structures. And so it's actually really interesting that that's played so like on the nose here. So I do like having him come back and be like our final antagonist.
Yeah, no, it's great.
And if I can just get like one last thing on this one, and I think we've been talking about how we like these movies on just a visceral level and everything, and how the visuals are cool, like the actors are attractive, the action is fun. There is also something actually just really sweet about this movie, and it didn't really occur to me until this viewing. But I was thinking about how, so we have the Red Queen has been coming back throughout this whole series. But in this movie, this latest iteration of the Red Queen is actually played by Paul W.S. Anderson and Milla Jovovich's daughter, Ever Anderson.
Right.
And I think it's just so cool that you're thinking about, these two came together and, they birthed a franchise and then they birthed a daughter. And this movie is, a tribute and a capper to all of that, right? It's a capper to, the franchise, but it's also a capper to the idea that they create a family over this. And the fact that they find a way to bring her in, and without getting into spoilers, even bring her in a way that ultimately creates this thematic connection between her and Alice, and even allows them to use Ever Anderson's real childhood photos and home video footage that they shot. It's just really cool to see it. This is a victory lap for their franchise, but it's also a victory lap for their family. And no matter what you want to say about these movies and how corny you think they are, I think there's just something so sweet and actually kind of romantic about that. And I love that Anderson was able to do that even in something as silly as Resident Evil.
Look at you, big softy. Hey?
I know, right?
I know. Wow. He has feelings, ladies and gentlemen.
I do.
No, I could not agree more about that. There's a thematic crux to this one that does work. And regardless of, we're going to talk about rankings right away. All 6 of them, I'm going to be rewatching, right?
Yeah.
There's not one that I'll skip. I will always watch them. And unapologetically and unironically, they're great. Yeah.
I'm done. The only thing I haven't done so far that I still want to do at some point in my life is watch all 6 of them in one day, and just see what happens to my brain. So at some point I'll do that.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
we'll do the Transformers movies as well, like that.
every couple of years I revisit this franchise, and it's always a good time.
Yeah, great, perfectly said. Let's talk ranking. Let's we went over our thoughts, so you heard us, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just go over where we rank these movies. Firstly, can I tell you what Brittany ranked them?
Sure.
I'm. You know, you're gonna hear. I think you care about more me, but I did ask her opinion because we did watch these together, and her ranking was 1, 2, 6, 3, 4, 5. And I have one little line from her. She had said to me that stuck with me. She goes, "The story and plot being the main considerations out of all of them," which is funny enough as it is. Number 6 is an interesting capper. 5's virtual world is boring, and it took forever for anyone to even talk to each other, which I actually agree. So yeah, 1, 2, 6, 3, 4, 5 for her. So I'm curious where yours are. I've never asked your ranking of this franchise.
Okay, so you want me to go from bottom up, or just probably makes more sense to just go top down? Right?
Yeah, top down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my favorite is the first one. I just think, as we said, like it is also the only one that you can kind of watch just singularly. Like we just said, we will always like to rewatch this franchise, but you can just watch the first movie and have it be just kind of this complete experience unto itself, which I wouldn't say is true of any of the sequels. But I just also, like I said, I really do think, like, beyond whatever like the silliness of the rest of the franchise, I think the first one is just is a legit good version of the movie it's trying to be that deserves more credit for that. So I just it's a personal favorite of mine. My number 2 is Afterlife. As I said, I think with Afterlife we see now this transition into what the second half of the franchise will be, and I think you're seeing kind of this perfected version of this new vision that Paul W.S. Anderson has for the franchise, this style forward vision, and I think it's done really effectively in this one. Now, here's where I might lose you. My number 3 is Part 5, Retribution. I understand. I totally understand everything you and Brittany had to say about it. But for me, I just that 4-5 duology, for what that is, it's just something so unique in like this kind of like IP filmmaking for me, that it's like, it's just so admirably dumb and bizarre and weird. You said avant-garde. It's a perfect way to put it. And that's why I just like love those two. And anytime I watch 4, I immediately want to roll into 5. So that's where that would fall for me. Okay. My number 4 would be Apocalypse. Number 2, again, I just love the schlockiness of it. I love the immediate turn to schlock after the first movie, and I just love that like the franchise had the balls to right away say like, okay, forget that whole thing about trying to be serious and let's just immediately go into like this like kind of more cartoonish silliness. Then my number 5 would be the final chapter. I do think it's a fun capper, hampered by some unfortunate editing, but it still gives you a satisfactory ending. And then my final one, and again, I know this is a lot of people's favorite one or pretty high, and I said I don't hate it. I don't hate any of these. My final one would be Extinction for the reasons I said. I enjoyed it more this time. I just still think of it as like kind of this like melange of like better movies, and it's like the one that to me maybe has it's the least a bit of its own identity within the Resident Evil franchise. So
sure.
Sure.
Well, we share 3, by the way.
Okay.
So 50%. We share bang on. And like I think I've mentioned this with the Underworld ranking and another Success to series we did, but I think it was the Final Destination maybe, is what I love about a franchise like this, and the ones that we cover on our spin-off show, Success to Series, is that there is no wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun that we can go through all 6 of these movies with the same like level of jubilation about them and whatnot, and then also have them totally scrambled. So I like that. But my original, or sorry, my number 1 is the original, of course. Mm-hmm. I think it needs to be talked about more in the vein of Mortal Kombat. Number 2 is Afterlife. Afterlife is just honestly just almost like kind of a perfect encapsulation of what I want from this. And most people are going to say, "Oh, why don't you put it number 1?" Because number 1 is a real movie. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Afterlife is barely a movie, but sometimes there's that secret sauce. So yeah. Afterlife is number 2. Number 3 is Extinction, for the reasons I said before. And also it's just the look of Milla in this is just so cool. And I love the outside look. It's just cool. I like that one. It's hard. It's funny when we talk about these movies. Oh, it's just cool. It's just cool. It's just cool. Like, I mean, yeah.
I think Paul would like love if that's what he heard us saying though, because that's what he was aiming for. Yeah.
Number 4 in the ranking is Apocalypse. Again, this is great. This is a lot of fun. Non-stop gunfights, explosions, stupidity, throwing a fucking motorbike. My number 5 is Retribution. So it's not my least favorite. but it's close. And then number 6 is the final chapter. This one is hard to watch. That's all I just keep saying that. I like the thematic crux. I like the arc. I like the full circle nature. I love the balls of Paul W.S. Anderson to be like, hey, yeah, I totally did this from the start on purpose. You know, like I love that, the audacity of that, and to think that we believe him. But it's like hard to watch. I just genuinely was like,
it like opens with an action sequence of her fighting like this like dragon thing and like a car chase through a dragon that is like legit like illegible. You just can't make out anything that's happening. Yeah.
So I have a problem with that. And then also abandoning what was promised the last one. It just pisses me off. Pisses me off.
You mentioned Brittany's rankings. I will just quickly say my wife Liz did watch these with me. Wouldn't say she was a fan. She declined. I invited her to do rankings. She laughed in my face when I asked her because I think that would require her remembering these 6 movies that she watched last week, which she apparently was not prepared to do. But from my memory, the first 3 in particular, she spent a lot of time on her phone, was not very engaged. Okay. Afterlife, when that one ended, she said, I actually kind of liked that one. So she was drawn in on that one. Cool. Retribution, when it ended, I looked over to her side, like with this big smile on my face, like, wasn't that great? And she just put a pillow over her face. So she was not as taken with Retribution. And number 6, again, I think she found like some of the stuff with Isaac's kind of fun, but couldn't care less. So I'd say like Afterlife was the winner for her, and the rest of them can take a flying fuck, apparently. But
I thought you were going to say after Retribution, you looked to see her and she was gone. She was gone. She had left the house.
But I will say, I believe I told you the story while we were watching the first one, is when we found out that the offer we had put in on a house was accepted. So she has agreed that we now have to get a poster for the first Resident Evil and hang that in the house, because we'll always think of that was the movie we were watching when we found out that we bought our house. Yeah.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Paul, if you're listening, look at you.
I know.
You know, you found your wife through this fantastical science fiction, extravaganza, and then Trev, forced it on his wife and got a house out of it, I guess. Yeah. It's all, you know what, Trev? It's about family.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
It is.
It's about family. Okay, I think that'll do it for Success to Series. This was great. There's a lot of fun. These are always just nice breaks from our Failure to Franchise main feed. Not that we don't enjoy that, obviously, but I think this is like loosey-goosey. We can just, wax poetically about things we like, and kind of just geek out a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah.
So
especially one like this, right? Where, because we said we look at, like, we talk so often about what's going wrong with franchise filmmaking today. And I would just encourage anyone who hasn't seen the series, hasn't watched in a while, really go back and revisit it now, because this is exactly what I feel like we're missing today. Right, is these like mid-budget level franchises where they're allowing one filmmaker to kind of have this like singular vision, even if it's like an insane vision. and yeah, I wish more people were taking like wouldn't it be great if a Marvel movie came out that was as insane as Retribution? I think there's something to be said for that. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Follow along at F2F Pod. That's at F2, the number 2F Pod on all the socials. Like us there, like us everywhere. Rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be great. And then just join the tribe and hit that subscribe, because next episode, we're going back to Failure to Franchise, like I said before, and we're looking at, funnily enough, you just said, the success of this off the fucking rails franchise. Well, they thought it was a good idea to go back to basics and adapt the video game proper with Welcome to Raccoon City from 2021, and it failed. So we are going to dissect why that failed, and it's a very cool dichotomy that we did this together on
a movie
Trick or Resident Evil.
Trick or Resident Evil continues with a movie I have never seen. I've never seen Welcome to Raccoon City, so I'm excited to visit it finally.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to get Liz to watch this one too?
Oh,
with the promise that it will not be like the other ones?
Oh, she just wants to watch all these with me, but even when it's like painful for some reason. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, well,
she'll probably just be happy that this time I won't have Milla to like be drooling over. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. She won't have to like steam clean the couch after.
I honestly don't even know I don't know if I could tell you a single actor that's in Welcome to Raccoon City. I really like kind of know no idea of this movie other than it is supposed to be more like the game. So
I think it's the girl from Crawl.
Oh.
All right, let's go. I gotta go.